Okay. You can.
Yes, my client owns this piece of property, which has been derelict for a number of years. He's trying to put something in the area which will serve the community and also be financially feasible. So he's looking to do this combination retail self-storage facility. This City Planning Commission has made a number of recommendations to us how to redesign the project, and we have redesigned the project according to y'all's requests.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions for the applicant or staff? Not, we have one card in opposition, Yvonne Mitchell Grubb.
Good afternoon. I'm Yvonne Mitchell Grubb, 2625 Holiday Drive in New Orleans, and I'm president of the Algiers Neighborhood Presidents Council. The Algiers Neighborhood Presidents Council supports the Old Algiers Main Street Corporation and the Algiers Riverview Association, and those two groups are members of Algiers Neighborhood Presidents Council in their opposition to the proposed conditional use and variance requested. They have strongly, both organizations as well as AMPC have strongly expressed disapproval of the structure and would desire, even though we know it's a place that is not in use right now, a different type of business is desired by the residents of that area. And we believe that it's very important to have business development, but also to take into consideration the concerns of the residents regarding the types of businesses that they're comfortable with in their neighborhood. So with that, we request that you not vote for establishing the storage facility there. I don't know if it's possible to suspend the rules. I do have a letter from our organization, from Algiers Neighborhood Presidents Council. If we can give that to you. If not, we will get it emailed to you.
Okay.
Like move for suspension of the rules to allow or accepting the letter.
Thank you.
Need a second.
Is there a second?
Second.
So Commissioner Lund made the motion, Commissioner Steig made the second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. All five, so. Yep. Thank you. Okay. You now have a chance for rebuttal.
Yes, as requested by the City Planning Commission, we had held neighborhood outreach meetings where we met with many of the neighbors of that area, and they were very vocal about things they did not like about the project. When initially submitted to them, the project was very different. We took into account their requested changes and the City Council's, the City Planning Commission's requested changes. So I kind of feel like the structure we're submitting to today is very different from the one that they had originally looked at and reviewed.
Okay. Thank you. Are there any further questions?
I have a question for the applicant.
Yes.
What type of retail business will go into the,
That's up to whoever wants to rent the spot. It could be nail salons, hair salons, retail outlets, whoever wants to rent these available spots would be available to do so.
thank you.
I have a question for lady who spoke for the neighborhood associations. I'm sorry, I don't recall your name.
Yvonne, Grubb.
For Ms. Grubb, thank you.
Yes.
Hi, thank you, over here. So the retail, the three retail spaces are facing Newton and the self-storage Diana, right? So what is the objection about the type of business or?
Well, if the change that we're hearing about today, we're just hearing about today. So yes, meetings were held. There was opposition to having the storage unit there. And any changes that were made as a result of that have not been forwarded to the community.
Does that include the retail, location of the retail spaces?
Yes.
Okay, and with that change, do you think that the view may be different from the neighborhood? You know,
I mean, it's possible,
possible.
but without having seen it, I don't want to just give a blanket yes.
And I think I have a quick question for staff. Is this something that could be deferred to allow for another, more communication with the neighborhood?
Well, 1 second. So the deadline is July 22nd. So no, this could not be deferred.
All right, thank you.
I also have a question for Ms. Grubb, if you would, please.
Yeah.
Sorry, I was trying to
Oh,
talk
no,
with some of the
that's okay.
neighborhood people.
The President's Council, is this a group that meets regularly, or is this just is it sort of an ad hoc
No, we
based on-
meet monthly.
at monthly?
Yes.
And this incorporates 20 official neighborhood groups?
Yes.
And how long has your organization been in existence?
About 30 years
Okay.
or more.
And you have 20 neighborhoods that have signed on to your to the
Yes,
President's Council.
When we met and we had a vote, and Algiers River Review Association is the closest neighborhood to that. And Old Algiers Main Street Corporation is on Newton Street. And at that meeting, they expressed opposition, and the Algiers Neighborhood President's Council voted to support them. So again, the changes that were mentioned today were not part of that discussion. We were not aware of those.
And the objection was solely based on what in particular about the old version?
That's what we were aware of at that time. And that's what the
And that.
neighborhoods were aware of.
And your disapproval hinged on what particularly about that old version of the project?
having, another storage facility in Algiers, and particularly at that location, we were looking for a different type of business that could actually serve the neighborhood.
So the addition of retail might,
And looking
Might
at
actually
something that would
affect
be
what-
aesthetic, an aesthetic improvement to the neighborhood as
Okay.
well.
thank you.
Are there any further questions for the staff of the applicant? If not, I'll ask for a motion.
Ms. Grubb, I have actually, before we have a motion, could I ask one more question?
Sure.
You to interrupt this conversation. Ms. Grubb, could I ask you one more question?
Yes.
So with the the aesthetic consideration was was mainly about Newton Street, correct?
The aesthetic consideration, and that it was just going
And
to
the-
be, from our understanding, a storage unit.
Right, right. But with what, about a third of it or a little bit more being used for retail, and that retail facing Newton does,
Well, also
in your
there was
opinion, would that address the concern?
possibly, also there was a concern about the size, because it was the size that was proposed, that, again, that we were aware of, was actually a little bit too large. for that lot.
And it was larger than this, larger. Okay,
Yes.
so the size, the aesthetics on Newton, not as concerned about the aesthetics on Diana.
Well, I mean, that's part of the neighborhood too.
Okay.
So,
Okay, and I'm just not familiar with Diana. If it's a
Yes.
corridor, it's not, Newton is the primary commercial corridor, right?
yes.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
I have another question for you. Now that you've seen the new proposed plans, which are obviously very different from what you were presented at your neighborhood council meeting. I know you cannot make a decision
Right,
for everybody else, but I'm just asking for a temperature of what, is this something more in the direction of what you were imagining? Or
That would be
thinking?
more in the direction.
Because
and
they have
just-
made a,
Concerned that
fence.
it's a size that actually fits on the lot.
because there's obviously an attempt to create a street-friendly design and landscaping. And, all of those, that which is in the provisos, so there is an attempt to create a more friendly building facade to a historic neighborhood. So I'm just wondering if,
Yes, and landscaping and so on would be desired. We just wish we had known before we came to the meeting today that that was a change that was being made.
and the reason I'm asking you is that if we did approve this today, is this something that you would work with the developer to to
Yeah.
create a favorable outcome?
Are you gonna work with them? Yes,
Thank
And I have one more question for the developer. So once you decided to make these aesthetic changes, why didn't you make the neighborhood association aware since they voiced some opposition to the original plans?
Well, it was a time frame. This project is owned by a national developer. Getting back and forth permission for them on how to proceed with this is a very difficult process. Once they gave me the go-ahead, it was just days before I had to submit to you revised drawings for this meeting. So I'm trying to juggle a lot of entities involved here. And when we talk about the size of the project, we're allowed to put up to 10,000 square feet on this project without an appeal. This project is 9,200 and some odd square feet. So we're under the allowable size.
So, Mr. Chair?
Yep.
Just to get us going, I'll make a motion. And my motion is for approval in accordance with staff recommendation. Partly because we're on deadline, so there really isn't any more time for the developer and the neighborhood to continue talking, at least at our level. But to me, the retail is going to be, has to be uses that are permitted. And we can't object to a use that's permitted. The size is apparently permitted. So the only issue is the self-storage facility, and that's been turned around and no longer on Newton Street. So I think the developer has made enough of an effort, at least at our levels, since we have to, since we're on deadline. So my motion's for approval in accordance with staff recommendation.
A second. And for those reasons, as well as it looks to me that the developer and the architect have moved forward, making some improvements that have been at the accommodation of the objecting neighbors.
So we have a motion by Commissioner Steig and a second by Commissioner Brown.
One more quick question, just make sure that architect, that
Yes,
the provisos, the permeability requirement or around that.
Of course, that will be
All
addressed.
right, thank you.
Berlin? I have these two. Oh, because it was written as number one at the minute. And so. We have we had a missing color. Yeah. Okay. I know.
So we have one more speaker to hear.
Yeah, apparently there was a missing card, a mislabeled card that,
Okay, so either do I need to withdraw my motion or can I just suspend it to allow the speaker who gave us a card?
no, there was a card, one was mislabeled. Mhm. You can withdraw the motion.
Okay, so I withdraw my motion so that we can reopen the public hearing, since we have one more speaker who signed up.
There's a card from Troyland Sledge.
Good afternoon. My name is Troyland Sledge, and I'm gonna speak on behalf of Alex Selico Dunn. He's the president of the Homeowner Association. He's unable to be here due to unforeseen circumstances. So I'm just going to do an excerpt. This particular corridor is in the heart of our community's commercial corridor. The proposed project will not bring any value to the community or enhance the quality of life for the residents of Algiers Riverview and the entire Old Algiers community. In partnership with the Old Algiers Main Street Corporation, we are working with potential developers to attract more meaningful developments throughout the entire community. This spot is the diamond with its high pedestrian and vehicular traffic. The developer has been shown to be ingenious. They scheduled a neighborhood information meeting on Friday afternoon, a time when working folks were not available. To their dismay, at least 25 community residents and business owners attended to express their disagreement and dislike of the idea. We are promised that there would be a subsequent meeting after they reported back to the developer. That meeting never occurred. The project does not work at that location. Not only does the community not need a storage facility to store excess goods for people from other areas outside of the neighborhood, the proposed facility is not allowed in a HUMU zoning district as defined in the comprehensive zoning code, which requires a developer to seek a conditional use allowance. And the structure is too large for the lot. So they need a variance as well. Algiers Riverview, hold on one moment, needs development and services that will profit a developer and increase the quality of life to bring some kind of equity into the community for residents of the Algiers Riverview and the entire Old Algiers community. The Algiers Riverview Association humbly requests the commission deny the permit for conditional use for a mini storage warehouse at this location. There's also another storage just like this one out there in Algiers. We don't need all those storage places. Basically, the people in the Riverview probably will not use the storage facilities. We need things that will bring equity into our community, places that we can go. We don't have to go outside of our community in Gretna, across the river, in Metairie. You know, fresh fruit, decent meat, coffee shop, where people can, there's a school, do something for the children.
Ms. Sledge, that's your time. So do we still have a motion? Oh,
So, I'm still gonna make the same motion, but I wish we did have more time, because I think the speakers in opposition have made some good points. It's always hard, though, to, we can't dictate. I totally agree, fresh fruit and meat would be great at that location, but sometimes we can't dictate the particular uses that people bring. We can only make sure they're either permitted, and then if they're conditional, consider them. And if they were still gonna have the self-storage on Newton, I might feel differently, but they're gonna have 3 retail days, and if a merchant with fresh food, et cetera, wants to take one of those retail bays, that would be great. So I am still gonna make the same motion, which was for approval in accordance with staff recommendation.
And I'll second again.
Okay, so now we'll call the vote. Commissioner Joshi Gupta,
Is this still up for discussion or we have to vote?
you have one.
I have a point that, I wish the developer would have, distributed these plans to the neighborhood. I don't know, it's a question for staff, like what is the procedure? Like what kind of fell through the cracks there?
So the procedure is that our previous staff report outlined several bullet pointed design changes that we were seeking. The revised plans were developed and sent to us, and we updated our staff report and published the staff report with those no plans attached. The developer is not obligated to, recirculate the revised plans to the attendees of the NPP meeting. They certainly are welcome to. But I wouldn't say anything slipped through the cracks. It's just, it is a matter of communication in a truncated timeline, and that's kind of the process that was followed.
Thank you. I just wanted to make sure, and yeah, I appreciate that.
Okay, we'll call the vote. Commissioner Joshi Gupta,
Yes.
Commissioner Lund,
No, I really don't like that they promised at the meeting that they would be contacted again. And then there was a major change in plans and they were not contacted again. A reason for my vote.
Commissioner Alexander,
Yes.
Commissioner Jordan, yes, Commissioner Brown,
Yes.
Commissioner Steve.
Yes,
Motion passes. Mr. Schroeder, this is no formal advice, but I'd recommend that an effort in good faith be at least some form of public meeting that you can have now with the community to show that there is an earnest attempt to make sure that there's support of local economic development.
Well, yes, we will be meeting with them. And as I had mentioned, we had made substantial changes to meet their requirements. They were very opposed to the self-storage. We then came back with the new plan with 3 retail bays on Newton Street as they had requested. And but thank you very much. I appreciate that.
No problem. Okay, next zoning docket item is 04923.
Zoning docket 4923 is a request for a conditional use to permit a principal use parking lot in an MU2 high-intensity mixed-use district and an EC enhancement corridor design overlay district. The applicant proposes to develop a paved parking lot with 10 vertical stacked parking spaces and a 12-foot wide aisle entranceway along Thalia Street. Due to the narrowness of the lot, this proposal is unable to comply with several provisions of the comprehensive zoning ordinance. Staff found the proposal did not adequately meet criteria required for multiple variances, which if granted would create public safety concerns. Staff also found the proposal to be out of context with the EC Enhancement Corridor Overlay District and the goals of the master plan, each of which aim to promote a mixed-use pedestrian scale environment. The proposal would lower the overall density of the streetscape and potentially preclude future infill development, effectively discouraging pedestrian use of the corridor. The staff recommends denial of zoning docket 4923, and the applicant has chosen to defer this zoning docket to the August 22nd CPC meeting.
Thank you. Is there an applicant present? There are no comment cards. Are there any questions for staff? If not, I'm looking for a motion.
What did the applicant hope to have happen between now and the deferred consideration?
The applicant requested to defer yesterday, so we don't have any updates from them, but they will be send us some revisions of the plan.
So as it, as it is now, it can't be recommended by the staff. And they're, between now and 2 weeks from now, they're going to have a revised plan that might change that or
Yeah, so communication with the applicant has basically expressed that we would need revised plans to come into compliance, which this is for denial currently. So they will most likely submit those plans within the next 2 weeks for the next CPC meeting that they'd be eligible for.
so that would need at least a month, right? To 2 meetings, not 1 meeting, correct? Or 3 meetings? I mean, I'm just.
Yeah, I mean, we need.
Is it even feasible for that to happen?
I mean, I think we should. Oh, what, August? Okay. Now it works. Sorry, I misunderstood.
I guess I'm asking what the staff would prefer if we're going to ask for the commission to defer this. Would you all need more time than a month?
So they're seeking August 22nd, correct? So that is more than enough time for us.
Is there a preferred deferral date? Or
August 22nd,
so for August 22nd?
yes.
And it's on deadline for,
It is on deadline in September, I believe, September 10th.
I have a question for staff. Is the use going to remain the same or are they coming back with another use for this property in their deferral plans?
The applicant is requesting a conditional use for a parking lot, so
That's
they
not
would be
changing.
requesting the same, or they would potentially withdraw.
I mean, I personally don't think a parking lot is the best use of that land and that space. So even if they deferred, I'm not sure what improvements, the streetscape is going to benefit from having a parking lot, even if we deferred it. So my feeling would be to vote on it today and go with staff's recommendation to deny this application.
is that a motion?
Yes, I am making a motion to deny.
I'll second.
So motion by Commissioner Joshi Gupta, seconded by Commissioner Brown. There are no further questions for staff. I'll call the vote. Commissioner Joshi Gupta,
Yes.
Commissioner Lund,
Yes.
Commissioner Alexander,
No,
Commissioner Jordan, no, Commissioner Brown,
Yes.
Commissioner Steve.
Yes,
So the motion moves forward with no recommendation. Where does that leave us?
So it's not on deadline yet, so there is the
Yeah.
ability to put forward another motion.
Yeah.
If somebody wanted to put a motion for deferral.
I think I'll do that since we weren't able to reach a decision,
Mhm.
rather than send it to the council with no decision. I'll move for a deferral and then we'll have a chance to consider it again
Okay,
to the August 22 date.
mhm. And the second motion is by Commissioner Steve. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Seconded by Commissioner Alexander. I'll call the vote. Commissioner Joshi Gupta,
No,
Commissioner Lund,
Yes.
Commissioner Alexander,
Yes,
Commissioner Jordan, yes, Commissioner Brown,
No.
Commissioner Steve.
Yeah, yes.
Does that leave us in the same place?
Now it goes to the council.
Okay,
With no.
great.
I would like to.
Okay. Let's see. Next docket item is zoning docket item 05023.
This will very much echo Sierra's presentation, albeit on Aretha Castle Haley Boulevard. Zoning docket 5023 is a request for conditional use to permit a parking lot, principal use in an HUMU historic urban mixed use district and an EC enhancement corridor design overlay district. The undeveloped lot measures 31 feet in width along the OC Haley Boulevard, 25 feet along Danielle Street, and 122 feet in depth. The applicant proposes an 8-space surface parking lot with a 10-foot drive aisle and an ingress egress on OC Haley. The proposal includes vertically stacked spaces requiring vehicles to back directly into OC Haley Boulevard. Due to the nearness of the lot, the proposal is unable to comply with several provisions of the CZO, including minimum permeable open space and quite a few provisions within Article 22 regarding parking dimensions and access. Staff found the proposal did not adequately meet the criteria required for these variances, which if granted would create public safety concerns. Staff also found the proposal to be out of context with the EC Enhancement Corridor Overlay District and the goals of the master plan, each of which aimed to promote a mixed-use pedestrian scale environment. The proposal would lower the overall density of the streetscape and potentially preclude future infill development, effectively discouraging pedestrian use of the corridor. For these reasons, we recommend denial. As you know, the applicant is requesting deferral until October 22nd.
Thank you. There are no comment cards. Any further discussion from the commission? Any questions for staff? If not, I'll ask for a motion.
Again, I'd like to make a comment that I do not believe that parking lots are best use of spaces in urban neighborhoods to preserve the walkability of our streetscapes and permeability of the groundscape. So I really think parking lots are the best use. So my vote would be to deny this.
I'll second.
We have a motion for denial from Commissioner Joshi Gupta, second by Commissioner Brown. There are no further comments or questions. I'll call the vote. Commissioner Joshi Gupta,
Yes.
Commissioner Lund,
Yes.
Commissioner Alexander,
No.
Commissioner Jordan, yes, Commissioner Brown,
Yes.
Commissioner Steve.
Yes.
Motion is denied. The docket item is denied.
This is not related to a vote, a decision, but could I ask a question of staff that I'm just curious about? You have to know how far this location is from the Brown's Dairy development.
Let me see.
Just wondering why they want to put all this.
I could try and. Offhand, I want to say it's about 6 blocks away,
Okay, thank you.
give or take. That's very
I have to drive
approximate.
by. Thank you.
Okay, next up is zoning docket 05123.
Zoning docket ZD 01523 at 807 Esplanade Avenue is a request for a conditional use to allow a principal bed and breakfast in an HMR2 historic Marigny Treme Bywater residential district. A principal bed and breakfast is categorized under the residential use. It is similar in nature to a small hotel, which is considered a commercial use, but because there is a requirement that principal bed and breakfast have either an owner or operator living on site, the impact is thought to be less impactful than that of a hotel. The site is currently developed with a 3-story multifamily dwelling with an on-site 3-story accessory structure in the rear. The structure has been used as a short-term rental in the recent past. However, the applicant intends on creating a principal bed and breakfast, which is a conditional use in the HMR2 district and allows up to 9 guest bedrooms. The proposed principal bed and breakfast would contain 6 bedrooms. 5 of the 6 bedrooms would be used as guest rooms. The other bedroom would be used for the owner or operator per Article 20, Section 20.3.I.2.A of the Comprehensive Zoning Ordinance. The subject site contains a historic 3-story dwelling and an accessory structure in the rear with a total of 6 units, 4 units between the 3 stories, as well as 2 units within the carriage house. Within the principal structure on the first floor, there's a large common space that includes a breakfast area and a kitchen available to all guests, as well as a bedroom on the first floor with a kitchenette, no stove. The second floor contains 1 bedroom with a full kitchen and the first floor of the owner's unit with a full kitchen. The third floor has the second floor of the owner's unit and another bedroom with a full kitchen. Within the accessory structure, there is a ground floor unit with a kitchenette, no stove, and a 2-story loft unit above with a full kitchen. In total, the property has a total of 7 kitchens with 2 structures on the site. No changes are proposed to the building footprint. Staff is seeking approval of zoning docket 05123, subject to 3 provisos.
Thank you. I have a card for Nicole Bell. On behalf of the applicant.
Good afternoon, Nicole Bell, 800 Barone Street, here on behalf of the applicant. I first just want to thank staff for their time on this matter and for the recommendation of approval. As Cameron mentioned, this is a simple request that involves a change in operation from short-term rental units to a bed and breakfast. The owners are excited to have an opportunity to use this beautiful property, which is their residence, in a way that is consistent with its design and contributes to the character of the neighborhood. And although they are not all present here today, we are excited to have the support of various neighbors as well as the FMIA, as expressed via email and written comment. I'm available to answer any questions. The owners are here as well to address any concerns. Thank you.
Thank you. There's another comment card from Alan Johnson.
Hello, my name is Alan Johnson. I live at 1418 Charters. I'm the president of Faubourg Meridian Improvement Association. After meeting with the owners at the MPP, the FMIA decided to support this one. This building, if you look up and down Esplanade, is really more suited, in our opinion, to be a bed and breakfast rather than a traditional single-family home, which I think it was built to be years ago. We've seen single-family homes turned into bed and breakfasts, turned into Airbnbs and stuff like that. But this building, with its size and its placement on Esplanade, is more suited to be that. Also, when you go up and down, when some people, I think, want it to be full-time housing, we know that. But a lot of the buildings that are quote unquote chopped up for apartments in our neighborhood that are turned into full-time housing are not housing. They're pied-a-terres for people to come in from out of town. I can say that. My uncle from Jackson, Mississippi had an apartment in a similar manner in a large house on Royal Street. So these large buildings are more suited to be bed and breakfasts. Additionally, the large houses we see like this that are chopped up to be housing aren't as well kept on Esplanade as this one is when it's a bed and breakfast. I live personally next to a bed and breakfast. That's on the corner of Charters and Esplanade. It's the old Llano Mansion or Benjamin Button House, you might know. Those large residences, I think, work best in this manner. They're more well kept up. This property is well kept up, and we appreciate the staff recommending support. We appreciate the owners and the beautiful job they've done on maintaining the building, and we ask you to support this as a bed and breakfast principle. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, that's it for cards and support. We have two cards in opposition. First up is Margaret Walker.
I'm confused here. I thought this is a Danielle one. I'm talking about the one on Esplanade and Bourbon. Am I okay with this one? Okay. I'm Margaret Walker and I live at 1526 Pogus Street, and I'm opposed to this property acquiring a bed and breakfast permit. I've owned a legal B&B since 2004. I follow all the rules and regulations for bed and breakfast. I live on the property. I have all the fire extinguishers checked yearly. I have a fire and carbon monoxide detectors. There's no stove in the unit as required by the law. I also pay my yearly permit fees and monthly tax fees to the city and state. I've been inspected by the city twice. I belong to the Piano Professional Innkeepers Association of New Orleans. As a group, we work hard to keep our reputation as B&Bs in New Orleans in good standing. Seeing these properties doing STRs and then pop up and decide to go, they're going to be a bed and breakfast is very troubling. They should follow the rules as we do as B&Bs. I drive by and walk by this property daily. I do not find them to be such great neighbors. There's several reasons why I do not think they should have a B&B permit. Somehow they acquired two short-term rental permits for the same property, one for the address on Esplanade and one for the address in Bourbon. This is not correct. This past November, there was a large party there and there were cars parked all over the neutral ground. That's illegal. In April, they had another violation for over occupancy and nuisance. They say they have a couples who's going to live on the property when they have customers there. This is not someone living on the property at all times. Currently, their Airbnb ad shows Mike, who's a super host, and he handles 68 properties on Book NOLA. The ad shows a stove in the guest unit. As of yesterday, they're advertising a whole house rental for 12 people, and it looks like it's booked for August and July. I thought the short-term rental had stopped all bookings for short-term rentals for till mid-August. So they've already broken a number of laws. I understand you'll probably move forward with this bed and breakfast permit, but it's not a legal B&B. This is a whole house rental. We've seen this with other B&B other short-term rentals that have turned to B&Bs in our neighborhood. I wanted I want them to know that I'm going to be watching them and I will be driving by and walking by. And if they break more laws, I'm going to call on them. I do not understand how people come into our neighborhoods and act like we owe them. When my husband and I bought my bed and breakfast in 2004, we had a crawfish boil. We invited all the neighbors over to see the place. And I still get the neighbors calling me about asking friends and neighbors, relatives, if they can rent
Ms.
it.
Walker, that's your time.
Thank you
Sorry.
very much.
We have another card from D. Roger.
Hello, Brian Rogers, 741 Barrack Street in New Orleans. With regard to the meeting that the owners had, it was not stated clearly that their short-term rental was up for renewal. We were led to believe that this was going to be a new filing, not a renewal. We want neighbors in our neighborhood rather than short-term rentals. I respect what Mr. Johnson has noted regarding the history and problems of figuring out what to do with these structures, but it's not my responsibility or the other lady's responsibility to help fund somebody else's renovation project. In terms of allowing it to have people renting for a minimum of 6 months, I see no reason why that should not be let to happen. Mr. Johnson has informed me that there apparently has been some kind of compromise worked out, which we were not aware of at the meetings a few weeks ago, wherein they would be, wherein the owners would be approved for 1 bed and breakfast unit, not up to 6 bed and breakfast units. This square is an area, particularly along the 1400 block of Bourbon Street, where there are numerous illegal B&Bs, and yet we see no enforcement actions to regulate that. The owners did not make anybody aware, besides the fact they said that they were occupying the property and living there, but have they also got their homestead exemptions tied to their location in this property? If a permit is to be allowed for a B&B for 1 year, then I think this should all be revisited to ensure compliance at multiple levels. We hope and expect that there'll be great neighbors with a great property in a great area. And we look forward to seeing that. But the history of such things leads one to doubt. And these are the doubts of the people in the community. Again, we're seeking neighbors, not to have a full square
Mr.
as
Roger,
basically a
that's your
hotel.
time. Sorry.
Thank you.
Thank you. The applicant has a chance to rebut.
Just to address the concern about the change in operation from short-term rentals to bed and breakfast, and a concern of opening, I guess, a floodgate of people doing that. The owner's original intent was to have a bed and breakfast at this property, but in the interim decided to go with the short-term rentals because of the shorter process, no requirement for a conditional use. Also, this is not a whole home rental. I believe one of the provisos that are along with staff's recommendation of approval are to submit plans showing ownership space again versus the guest space. And so then everyone will have an opportunity to see exactly where the owners are dwelling in the residence. Also, just to address, this does have to be a new application. There's no renewal of a short-term rental application. It is an application for a bed and breakfast, which will allow for 9 guest bedrooms. We didn't have any compromise about 1 unit or whatnot. It will allow for 9 guest bedrooms with the principal bed and breakfast.
Thank you. Are there any questions for the applicant or staff? If not, I'll ask for a motion.
I make a motion that we approve this application per staff recommendation.
Is there a second?
I'll second to get it started here if there's discussion.
Is there any further discussion?
I have a question for staff. On the plans, I find it really hard to understand which are the owner's units that are delineated.
So the owner's unit starts on the second floor and they're proposing a two-story unit that the second floor of the owner unit would be on the third floor. Within the report, I believe there is an image in which the 6 separate units are color coded. If I'm not mistaken, the owner's unit is in a navy color. So the 2 squares that are navy show the 2 floors of the owner's unit.
And the second question is, are the owners living here full time?
I believe the intention is that that would be their unit that they would live in full time. I'm unaware if they're currently living in that space.
Because the intention of any bed and breakfast is to have full-time owners who actually serve breakfast to guests. So I was just wondering about how that happens.
There's a requirement that it be owner or operator occupied, so someone will need to live there. It won't necessarily be the owner, however.
And
Is
also,
oh, sorry.
sorry, and also in the provisos, I see that you want to take out all of the cooking facilities. So you're asking to take out the cooking facilities? Is that something that was discussed with,
So
I'm asking the staff if that was discussed with the owners?
yeah, so there's a requirement that a bed and breakfast not have cooking facilities in individual rooms, and so I believe there currently are, and so there would need to be the removal of those such that there's only one for the house.
Yeah, so I'd love to ask the applicant if that's something that you're gonna comply. Are you gonna comply to removal of all the cooking facilities?
Absolutely. That was one of the things that we submitted with our application was a statement saying that those kitchens would be removed as needed. And also, I believe they are 3 weeks out from a final move-in where they will be living there full time. It's just getting everything moved in. So that'll for sure be in the case.
Are you okay? Yeah. Is the owner with you? Who will, and you will, would you?
May I make a quick comment? We were not aware that the
Sorry,
owners
the comment
Public
period is
Comment is
closed.
over.
property full
Sorry,
time.
you-
Public comment is over.
Yes, hello. Thank you all for having us today. We'll certainly answer any questions you might have.
Sure, there was some questions, I know for one of the commissioners, whether or not you would be living there, serving breakfast as traditional with the bed and breakfast model. I know that that's not a requirement that the owner actually live there, that it be an operator full-time. What is your plan?
Well, my intentions is very clear and we've made that aware, to the neighbors when they came by. This is my forever home. This is where I plan to be forever. And having this bed and breakfast has always been something I wanted to do, especially when I bought the property. I saw the opportunity. And for the lady who spoke, and I appreciate her comments about being a part of the association. I talked to another neighbor who is a member of the Piano Association. We plan to join that. And in our tour that we gave to the neighbors who did come, we were able to show them where the breakfast will be served for our guests because we have a special place with a bar for that. And this is our full-time place of residence. This is where we're going to be full-time, and this bed and breakfast is important to us, and not just that is being a good ambassador for the city and living down in the Marigny. I grew up in Iberville housing projects, not far from there, and I moved to New Orleans East, and now that the kids are out of college, we're coming down closer to the city, and this is what we want to do with the property.
Thank you. So you do plan to live there?
Full time, every day.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, could we get your name and?
Blair Boutte, 807 Esplanade Avenue.
Thank you.
Thank you.
If there are no further questions for staff or the applicant, I'm looking for a motion.
I made the motion to support the application and per staff recommendation.
There a second? Oh, whoa. Bless you.
Mr. Chairman.
Was it still a motion?
Yeah,
motion
we
active?
are, there's a
Sorry,
motion on the
because
floor.
there were comments. Okay, so the motion was by Commissioner Alexander and the second was
Second
Commissioner
by
Brown.
Commissioner Brown, yeah.
Okay, if not, I'll go ahead and call the vote. Commissioner Joshi Gupta? Commissioner Lund?
Yes.
Commissioner Alexander?
Yes.
Commissioner Jordan, yes. Commissioner Brown?
Yes.
Commissioner Steve?
No,
Okay, zoning docket is approved. Next up is subdivision docket 07123.
Subdivision docket 7123 is a request to create two separate lots of record from one existing lot that contains two dwellings. The applicant wishes for each of the two dwellings to occupy its own separate lot of record. This request must be considered by the City Planning Commission because one of the resulting lots will be less than 1,800 square feet. So it's not eligible for administrative approval under policy E of the subdivision regulations. One of the other criteria for approval under policy E is that the structures on the property were in existence prior to 1929. The staff has verified this to be the case at the subject property, as both dwellings do appear on 1929 Sanborn Fire Insurance map. The staff recommends approval of subdivision docket 7123, subject to 2 waivers and 3 provisos.
Thank you. We have no comment cards. Are there any questions for staff? If not, I'll ask for a motion.
I move for a recommendation for approval of subdivision docket 7123 as recommended by staff.
Is there a second?
I'll second. Speak seconds.
Commissioner Lund made the motion, Commissioner Steve second. If there's no further comment or question, I'll call the vote. Commissioner Joshi Gupta?
Yes.
Commissioner Lund?
Yes.
Commissioner Alexander?
Yes.
Commissioner Jordan, yes. Commissioner Brown?
Yes.
Commissioner Steve?
Yes.
Subdivisions move forward. Next up is the discussion of firearms sales study.
City Council motion M 23-163 requests the City Planning Commission to conduct a study and make recommendations regarding the addition of firearm sales as a use separate and distinct from retail goods establishment, and to make recommendations regarding potential zoning changes that would prohibit the sale of firearms within 1,000 feet of education facilities. Motion M 23-163 was brought forward by the New Orleans City Council to consider land use regulations similar to those proposed by Jefferson Parish's Council Resolution 141684, which created interim development standards with the intent of evaluating and amending regulations related to firearm commercial establishments and firearm-free zones, establishing interim development standards during the study. The scope of work for the firearm sales study will similarly include the review of the legal parameters and best practices that would either prohibit or enable recommendations to move forward. For instance, Louisiana Revised Statute 40.1796 preempts the city of New Orleans from enacting ordinances that are more restrictive than the Louisiana statutes governing the sale, purchase, possession, or ownership of firearms. Louisiana Revised Statute 1495-6 establishes firearm-free zones, which prohibit the possession of a firearm within 1,000 feet of a school campus. However, this provision does not apply to commercial establishments which are permitted by law to have firearms. The City Planning Commission is responsible for creating and maintaining a map of all firearm-free zones throughout the city. City Council motion M 23-163 doesn't explicitly state a time frame in which to hold a public hearing. However, the City Planning Commission generally holds public hearings within 90 days of the passage of the motion and completes the study within 180 days of the passage of the motion. The public hearing for the firearm sales study was postponed from the June 13th, 2023 regular meeting. The postponement allowed time for staff to contact stakeholders and engage them in the public hearing process. Revised significant dates and deadlines for the firearm sales study are as follows, but please note that these dates are subject to change. April 20th, 2023, motion M23-163 was adopted by City Council. June 13th, 2023, City Planning Commission meeting public hearing was deferred to today, July 11th. City Planning public hearing July 11th, 2023, City Planning Commission's public hearing. September 26th, 2023, draft study will be made available to the public. October 2nd, 2023, deadline for written comments. October 10th, 2023, City Planning Commission consideration of the study. October 17th, 2023, deadline for the study and CPC recommendation to be forwarded to City Council. After the recommendation is forwarded to City Council, the next steps are at the discretion of City Council. Changes to the comprehensive zoning ordinance are typically proposed through a City Council motion directing the CPC to consider a text amendment to the CZO. If such a motion is passed by the City Council, the CPC will prepare a staff report, hold a public hearing, and make a recommendation to the City Council. To approve any CZO changes, the City Council will have to hold its own public hearing and approve an ordinance. Any changes to city code will require a separate ordinance by the City Council. Written comments should be addressed to the Executive Director of the City Planning Commission or emailed to cpcinfo@nola.gov. No action is required at this time.
Thank you. Are there any questions or comments for staff or anything of note from the director?
There is one public comment, I believe.
I have one information card from Joycelyn Pemberton.
Hi, my name is Jocelyn Pinkerton. I'm the Domestic Violence and Sexual Assault Program Director for the City of New Orleans Health Department. And I'm just here to provide public comment on the firearm sales study. So earlier this year, the Health Department was allocated some funding to initiate a gun safety campaign. One reason that we have prioritized this work is because our statewide child death review has found that Louisiana has the highest rate of injuries and deaths from unintentional shootings by children in the country. In looking at data for homicide rates for children ages 0 to 14 over the last couple of years, New Orleans ranks the third highest region in the state. And almost half of homicide deaths of children are with firearms. So our state death review found that firearms cause a significant contributor to our homicide rates of children, both injury and death. Our New Orleans Police Department had in the last 2 years received about 10 per year reports of children accidentally getting access to and firing firearms. So you can imagine that those are only the incidents that have been reported to the police. We know that this issue of children having access to firearms as firearm sales have gone up in the last couple of years since the pandemic. We're really fearful that this is having an increasingly negative impact on our community's health. So as I mentioned, the health department has really been prioritizing a gun safety campaign. We received some funding to start providing educational information targeting parents to securely store firearms so that children do not have access. And we feel that gun sales that are in close proximity to places where children are obviously and where parents are could obviously contribute to the negative impacts of potentially having unsecured firearms in the home. We know that a lot of people are fearful about perceived rising rates of crime and justly so. But data also shows that having firearms in the home that are unsecured actually perpetuates further death and injury, especially impacting children and teenagers who are at risk of suicide. So just wanted to add that comment here.
Thank you. Any comments or questions from commission or staff or?
So the part of your presentation that you read that municipalities supposed within the state cannot enact ordinances that are more restrictive with regard to firearm sales than the state allows. Is this in conflict with that? depending on the outcome of this study?
That's what the study will conclude, is if the recommendation to create a separate use and restrict it within 1,000 feet is in conflict. So that is the purpose of the study.
That is the purpose of the study.
Yeah.
Okay. So if it's determined that it's in conflict, you can't move forward.
So there will be a
Stand up.
study. The study will move forward. The issue is going to be whether we can be making recommendations for specific legislation that is over and above what currently exists. And that's what we're looking into. We're having conversations with the law department. We're doing research in other jurisdictions to really kind of dig into that issue of whether or not the state, what is the scope of the restriction that state regulation imposes on our ability to use land use as a tool to govern where firearms can be sold.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any other questions? If not, we'll move on to the next docket item. Thank you. Okay.
I have the next docket item too.
Great.
City Council Motion M23-247 requests the City Council, City Planning Commission to conduct a public hearing to study the impacts and recommend updated regulations for commercial short-term rentals and transient lodging uses, including but not limited to hotel, motel, timeshare, hostel, and bed and breakfast. This transient lodging study will replace the commercial short-term rental study already being conducted pursuant to motion number M23-120, though any public input and research related thereto may be incorporated into the transient lodging study as may be appropriate. The transient lodging study shall address the following areas, some of which were outlined in motion M23-120. For commercial STRs only, limitation on number of commercial STR units per building, a ban on whole home or whole building commercial STRs. For all transient lodging uses, including commercial STRs, limitation on number of rooms and guests by unit, other density limitations, which may vary by zoning district classification, future land use designation, or other such land use designation. Number of permits allowed per owner and or operator. Requirement that each permit holder is a national person, not a judicial person. Strengthen requirements, including density limitations and other standards for transient lodging uses that one, about residential or mixed use zoning districts, and or two, are located in a building that also houses long-term residents so as to mitigate quality of life impacts. A requirement for transient lodging uses to be located on the same lot, parcel or building as other commercial uses. Possible use of transient lodging allowances to incentivize the development or preservation of affordable and or workforce housing. In buildings with units used for both long-term and short-term housing, requiring separate entrances to access short-term dwelling units. Requiring other standards for entry, including keypads. Requiring on-site operators. Requiring a 24/7 staff front desk in a publicly accessible space. Overall impact of commercial STRs and other transient lodging uses on the availability of long-term housing, affordable workplace, and market rate, and possible measures to mitigate such impacts, including but not limited to an overall cap on person or permits who may participate in commercial STR and other transient lodging markets, and increasing the price of commercial short-term rental owner and or operator permits. Establishing and or modifying use standards for transient lodging uses as may be necessary, including for hotel, motel. Closing loopholes that allow buildings operating as hotels, other transient lodging uses, or long-term residences to allocate 100% of units to commercial STR use. The City Planning Commission will be engaging outside resources such as an independent contracting firm to complete the 2023 transient lodging study. A request for proposal is underway. City Council Motion M23-247 requires the City Planning Commission to hold a public hearing within 90 days of the passage of the motion and to complete the study within 180 days of the passage of the motion. The significant dates and deadlines for the 2023 transient lodging study are listed below. Please note that these dates are subject to change. May 25th, 2023, motion M23-247 was adopted by City Council. July 11th, 2023, City Planning Commission public hearing. October 16th, 2023, deadline for written comments. October 10th, 2023, draft study will be made available to the public. October 24th, 2023, City Planning Commission consideration of the study. November 21st, 2023, deadline for the study and CPC recommendation to be forwarded to City Council. After the recommendation is forwarded to City Council, the next steps are at the discretion of City Council. Changes to the comprehensive zoning ordinance are typically proposed through a City Council motion directing the CPC to consider a text amendment to the CCO. If such a motion is passed by the City Council, the CPC will prepare a staff report, hold a public hearing, and make a recommendation to the City Council. To approve any CCO changes, the City Council will have to hold its own public hearing and approve an ordinance. Any changes to City Code will require a separate ordinance by City Council. Written comments should be addressed to the Executive Director of the City Planning Commission or emailed to cpcinfo@nola.gov. No action is required at this time.
Thank you. We have quite a bit of cards. We have 2 cards in support. We have a card from Margaret Walker.
Hello again, I'm Margaret Walker. I live at 1526 Potter Street. I'm here again talking about short-term rental, and I do appreciate all the time and effort you're putting into this. As you're aware, we're seeing these commercial properties in residential neighborhoods bought up by investors for short-term rentals, commercial short-term rentals. Commercial short-term rentals are hotels. That's a business, and we don't need any more hotels or short-term rentals in our residential neighborhoods. A residential neighborhood is where residents live. You need to stop all the pending commercial short-term rentals and hotels until we get the new laws passed. Example, what's happening, I live close to St. Anthony Street. It's a 2-block street. These are all the commercial short-term rentals in red, okay? And they're going on now. If they have a block surrounding, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4 are already are pending. The other ones are already there. The green one is a 10-room hotel, okay, that's going up as well. And the black is the residential short-term rental. This is what the 10-room hotel looks like. Used to be a shotgun, you know, with 2 sides, but now they're turning it into a 10-room hotel. The owners think they seem to have a right, and they don't really care about what we as neighbors think. My friend was writing an email to one of the owners. He's planning to do a 5 to 6 short-term rental commercial properties, planning to build across the street from the one that he owns already next to it, which is an 8 short-term rental, full house rental. And she was writing back and forth, telling him how she lived across the street. She didn't really want to see this going on in her street. And his response to her was, fortunately, 3 of my friends who invested in this property with me happen to be attorneys. So I'm not really concerned about attempts to prevent me from exercising my rights and my own portion of American freedom. So these commercials are taking up real neighborhood properties that could be owned and lived in by real people. And I am in support of the study.
Thank you. Next up, we have Alan Johnson.
Hello, my name is Alan Johnson. I live at 1418 Charters, and I'm the president of Faubourg Meridian Improvement Association. I'd like to thank y'all for taking up this entire study. For too many times, we've segmented this. It's called the category game. You call yourself a short-term rental, a hostel, a hotel, a bed and breakfast. We can't keep track of it all. And before we put density limitations in for each category, the entire block has disappeared. We've seen our neighborhood disappear. No density limitations were put in the first time, second time around. We argued for them, they weren't put in, and the Marigny is disappearing. So I'm glad we're doing everything all inclusive, but I'd like to talk about one thing in particular. That is a problem with the zoning code. The zoning code requires conditional use for a hotel in the Marigny, HMC2 zoning, which is Marigny, Tremaine, Bywater, of over 10,000 square feet. That means under 10,000 square feet in this candy cane red area right here, you can take any building and make it a hotel by right. Now, I don't know about you, but I don't think of this as a hotel. This is a double shotgun, which is being licensed as a hotel as we speak at the corner of Elysian Fields and North Rampart, right across from Mags. This is about 1,400 square foot double shotgun, but because of a glitch in the rules, they're allowed to become a hotel. We urge you to fix this rule. If not, the entirety of St. Claude, the entirety of Elysian Fields, every building there can become a hotel by right as long as it's under 10,000 square feet. Think of how many of those double shotguns you see when you drive down those streets. Also, we as the FMIA do not believe we should have commercial short-term rentals, to be quite honest with you. Rather than playing this category game and all these different qualifications, let's call them what they are. They're hotels. We did this with the residential short-term rentals a few months ago, where we recognized the similarities between residential short-term rentals and bed and breakfasts, where we required the density codes to include both of those. Let's call these what they are. Let's call them hotels. Let's not have commercial short-term rentals or hotels are going to be doing whatever they want and just playing the category game. We also ask that you look at what the buildings are. Now, I know zoning code does not allow you to say, doesn't recognize different building types, but we've recognized different building types when it came to the multifamily study a few years ago. The multifamily study allowed you to look back, see the history of the building and whether or not it had been multifamily at one point. This was obviously built to be housing, not hotels. We ask that you do that going forward with commercial short-term rentals or hotels. Thank you.
Thank you. We have one card in opposition, Catherine Barbero.
Hello, my name is Catherine Barbero. I live at 2811 Ursulines Avenue in New Orleans, which is in the Bayou St. John neighborhood. And I do want to go on the record as supporting limitations on the proliferation of short-term rentals in historic neighborhoods and truly residential neighborhoods. And I would be supportive of reasonable limits in commercial areas. But if you look at Magazine Street, it's pretty much boutiques, et cetera. You know, that's what a commercial zone is about. So, you know, if you live in a commercial zone, you should be able to tolerate some rentals. But really why I'm here in opposition to the commercial short-term rental study, I mean, I'm okay with studying and I didn't know whether to put down I was in opposition or for it, or just information, but I am an owner of a legal commercial short-term rental, which is a single family residential. And I understand the study is looking at banning whole house short-term rentals in commercial zones. But I think in some zoning areas, such as marine mixed use out in Lake Catherine, lakefront, resort type areas, these are not inhabited by full-time residents. They're not neighborhoods that have full-time residents. They're generally partially occupied vacation homes, and there is a proliferation of short-term rentals, which is actually a good thing. And people are getting the chance to enjoy sportsman's paradise and fish at the lakefront and have a whole home to yourself private experience for your large family, your extended family, or a small group of friends. So I am in support of keeping whole home residential single family commercial short-term rentals in some zones. And I'm not familiar with all the zones, but when I bought my property with my husband, a poor mom and pop operation, I also own some traditional rentals in a historic area that I'd have no desire for it to be short-term. And has neighbors for the neighboring properties. But out in the marine M-MU districts like Lake Catherine, it's really well suited for short-term rentals so that I can share my vacation home instead of having to sell it because I wouldn't have been able to afford to buy it last year, other than, you know, supplementing my retirement income with that short-term rental. And I think it's a good thing for both the city of New Orleans and the neighbors to have short-term rentals in some zoning rather than blanketing single-family homes in commercial zoning areas. I think they should be looked at zone by zone
and
Thank
some
you, Ms. Bellbear.
zoning areas
That's your time.
differences. So thank you.
Thank you. We have quite a few information cards. First up is Nathan Chapman.
Good afternoon. My name is Nathan Chapman, 715 Ursulines. I'm president of Bucray Property Owners, Residents and Associates, which we call BCPOR for short. In that long list of items that the city council included in its motion of things that y'all might want to study, I want to applaud that one of the things not listed was to not revisit the topic of the zoning bans for additional transient rentals in the French Quarter of the Garden District. And since I'm here, I'm going to tell you why that's a good thing. So in 1969, the city council changed the zoning to stop additional transient rentals. At that time, it was obviously before the internet for things we called short-term rentals, but in particular hotels. We were starting to lose the neighborhood because the French Quarter had been such a preservation success. People came from all over the world, and they come even more now to see the French Quarter. We would be nothing but overnight rentals if we didn't put a stop on it. Even to this day, you'll see on hotels' websites, we're only steps from the French Quarter, and they're quite a few steps away, right? That's how famous the French Quarter is. So I know with this aspect, the topic is commercial, okay? Well, in the French Quarter, with the possible exception of the entertainment aspect of Bourbon Street, all of our commercial areas like Charter Street and Royal Street, they're really mixed use. And above those stores or restaurants, there's a lot of people living there. And it would be apocalyptic if you were to change the zoning and lift that ban in the French Quarter. You know, it's something that's worked well. Tourism has grown with this. It spread out tourism like to downtown and things like that. And so it's something that's worked really well. And I appreciate everyone keeping that as it is. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up is Maxwell Giardillo.
Thank you. Before I start, are those dates that were listed before the timeline, are those going to be posted somewhere? I know the system's down, but I think that would just be really helpful for everyone to know those dates.
This, I'm assuming we have, like we do all of our other studies, there's this page that we have on our website for this study. And so anything that we produce as far as the staff report will be posted on that page.
Great, thank you. Maxwell Chardullo, Louisiana Fair Housing Action Center, 1340 Poydras. So our concerns about commercial short-term rentals are similar to those about residential short-term rentals because so many mixed-use areas where CSTRs are allowed are actually a part of neighborhoods and contain homes for thousands of our residents. So therefore, commercial short-term rentals are still about preventing displacement, eviction, removal of units from the market, and the rising cost of housing. The difference with commercial short-term rentals is that their owners and investors are far more likely to be out-of-town bad actors with even more money to spend. And they're so enormously profitable that they're beginning to crowd out everything else like t-shirt shops in the French Quarter. The good news is there's an easy way to limit commercial short-term rentals and help solve our affordability crisis. And that's making new commercial short-term rental permits an additional incentive a developer is entitled to when they build a development with affordable units. The inclusionary zoning regulations already exist in our code to deal with this. We'd just be adding an additional incentive to them. The key, though, to ensuring that this creates new affordable units is limiting commercial short-term rentals to only these developments with affordable units. It ensures that the people who actually live here are always getting a benefit when we permit new commercial short-term rentals, and it keeps them from running rampant and displacing people. Now, the other crucial point is ensuring that commercial short-term rental operators don't try and undermine our regulations and get out of their responsibilities by trying to pose as hotels, hostels, and B&Bs. Which is why it's important this is all being taken together. And on this point, we would encourage the CPC to focus on defining these transient lodging uses in ways that will allow them to be vetted when they apply on the front end, rather than ways that will require staff to check up on their compliance after they're built. So as an example, requiring 24-hour staffing at a hotel is great, but if you have to issue the permit first and then check up on whether someone is actually at the desk,
Safety and permits doesn't have the staff for that. Requiring that all hotels have a minimum number of rooms, 10, 20, whatever it is, will immediately deny applicants who show up with blueprints to turn their double into a hotel. And that's how we save that time. And then lastly, we just urge you to select someone to do this study who has some local knowledge of New Orleans and its specific experience with short-term rentals. Thanks.
Thank you. Next up, we have Alicia Fink. Or Alicia Fink.
Okay, Alicia Fink, 2617 Laurel Street. I think the reason why this is all happening is because of the Brown's Dairy situation, I'm pretty sure. And I know everyone, including people that have commercial short-term rentals, can agree that that was a, pretty devastating to the Central City neighborhood. I do want to draw to the City Planning Commission's attention that there are many instances where a commercial short-term rental is not taking from long-term housing. There have been so many instances and where there have been dilapidated houses that have been vacant for years, if not decades. And now those are commercial short-term rentals that do not affect long-term housing. And I'm sure that you know that, but I don't know if there's a way to incorporate that into your study or not, but and then secondly, if there's a way to suggest to the city council to maybe make some sort of motion where it would be illegal to kick previous tenants out to create a commercial short-term rental, that might also be beneficial. I don't know the legalities of that, but that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Monique Blossom. Okay. Rebecca Justice.
Hi, good afternoon. Rebecca Justice, 8601 Leaf Avenue. I am a proponent for transient lodging, short-term rentals in appropriate spaces. So I didn't know if I was for or against the CERT study because we weren't there yet. But I just want to tell you a little bit about my story and the business that we're building. So born and raised here. Well, most people debate I'm from Kenner, but I think that counts. Been living in New Orleans for 15 years now. I work with a staff of 5 full-time managers, 3 full-time maintenance people, and 10 full-time cleaners that work in vacation rentals, bed and breakfasts, hostels, and boutique hotels. I'm very proud to say that we pay above the average rate. Biznola had an article just today that said that the average person needs to make $22.73 in order to afford a 2-bedroom house in New Orleans for rent. I'm proud to say that my maintenance guys make $30 an hour, and my cleaners make anywhere from $20 to $25 an hour. And they do that through transient lodging. Vacation rentals a lot of times are the stepping stone into investing into New Orleans. One of my owners, David, he took a property that was abandoned and blighted for 30 years. For 30 years, nobody wanted it. For 30 years, nobody could do anything with it. There wasn't a roof to tarp. There wasn't anything more than just the skeletons of it. He decided to take that property and invest in New Orleans and invest into that property. And now that money went to contractors, to us, to pay my mortgage. And that money goes to David, who lives in the Marigny. And that cleaner who, lives uptown. So I think that as we look at it, we need to be aware that there is this ecosystem that's coming above, that more of the tourism dollar stays in New Orleans because it's not going to a major brand who's paying their people less than that $22.73 on average.
Thank
I-
you. That's your time.
Thank you.
We have one last card from Mavis Early.
Good afternoon. Good to see you all again. I'm Mavis Early. I am Executive Director of the Greater New Orleans Hotel and Lodging Association, representing over 100 hotels in New Orleans. First of all, thank you, the Planning Commission and staff, for conducting this study and of not only commercial short-term rentals, but of all transient lodging uses. We think, there's so much on that list to be done. It's daunting, but the one thing that I wanted to speak about today was the need for a definition, a clear definition of hotel to distinguish it from short-term rentals. And that has seemed over the years to be the only issue, that bed and breakfast was a bed and breakfast, and there was not any question about it. But what's happening is that many people or operators are getting hotel licenses, but actually operating short-term rentals. And it's a way of getting around some of the 25%, for instance, short-term rentals in 100-unit or more, or, a large commercial building. So there was a definition set by Safety and Permits and a memorandum, but that is not in the CZO. So we're asking that that be considered to be placed in the CZO, as well as some more distinctions that need to be made between hotels and short-term rentals. So I'm going to keep it short. There's a lot more I could say, but thank you very much. That's my bottom line today.
Thank you. We have a couple more cards. Next up is Troy Dupuy.
Hello, Troy Dupuy, 1111 South Peter Street, representing the Warehouse District Neighborhood Association. Our neighborhood association is from Magazine Street to Convention Center Boulevard, the bridge to Porter Street. So I don't represent Lafayette Square and things like areas like that. So yeah, we have issues with the short-term rentals. The biggest issue is some of the ones that are coming up as proposed. They're trying to sneak in under the cover of being a hotel. I know the hotels generally are supposed to have, one bathroom per bedroom. We have one that's proposed. It's basically a 11-bedroom bachelor pad party house. They're trying to sneak in as a hotel. We're against that type of property setting up. We're basically against the commercial short-term rentals. In our area, we're not opposed to hotels, but we are opposed to the commercial short-term rentals that are trying to sneak in as hotels. There's other benefits that hotels get that we're afraid that the commercial short-term rentals pretending to be hotels would try to use, like hotels are a very easy process to get a bar as part of their property. So we wouldn't want to see commercial short-term rentals, sneak as a hotel and get that as there also. We do have some bigger properties that are kind of limited services hotels. We haven't had a whole lot of issues with that, but I would like to see that they are operating as a hotel permit. We'd like to see some of that redefined and as part of this process that maybe they have to have someone on staff for their whole time, because right now you walk in and there's an iPad, there's nobody there. So I think reinforcing what the hotel definition is would help a lot in our neighborhood to again, we're not opposed to hotels, but the commercial short-term rentals are definitely going to be causing a problem here very soon. So thank you.
Thank you. Next up, we have Frank Southall. Why Frank Southall?
Sorry. Good afternoon, everyone. Yasin Frank Southall, Organizing Communication Manager, Jane Place Neighborhood State Building Initiative. I'm a resident of Mid-City. I live around a lot of mixed use areas, so this is like not just professionally, but also personally impactful for me. Thank you all for expanding study to include all transient lodging. Our city has been incredibly impacted by transient lodging in residential areas. We have also seen the impact of dorms doubles in Uptown. We need to include residential STRs and student housing in this study. After all, these properties are transient in nature. Furthermore, the historic core of the city contains so many mixed-use zone areas. We need to protect these areas to ensure that renters aren't cut off from vital services such as access to public transit, grocery stores, hospitals, etc. We need safeguards to ensure that renters aren't displaced by transient lodging coming in. Furthermore, looking towards racial equity and ensuring diversity, we need to understand how transient lodging impacts the diverse cultures of New Orleans and how it impacts, in particular, working class Black Native New Orleanians who are by numbers the most displaced in our city, objectively. But to be clear, we are against any and all transient lodging that displace any working class and middle class individuals and families in our parish. This study needs to impact this. Jane Police would love to talk with anyone, everyone conducting a study and share information, experience, and data on how transient lodging impacts renters, homeless individuals, working class homeowners. Please ensure that whomever is selected for a study has deep local knowledge of our city and has extensive experience doing deep community engagement work. Thank you all so much.
Thank you. Next up is Aaron Holmes.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. My name is Erin Holmes. I'm the Executive Director of VC Pora. Thank you all, especially the staff and my colleagues behind me. This topic is exhausting. We've all been doing this for a really long time, but it is very important. Before I go into specifics, I kind of want to look at the overall picture. I really want this study to fully contemplate the tourism industry and its impact on the city of New Orleans. We really need to take a hard look at the overall carrying capacity of New Orleans. Just because we can build spaces for an increasing number of visitors, should we? 2012, we had 13 million visitors. In 2019, we had 19.75 million visitors. What's it going to look like in 8 years? Can we do this with a continuously failing infrastructure and a complete reliance on a very temperamental industry that displaces taxpayers? The average household income in New Orleans cannot compete with out-of-town investors, period. So I really want this study to truly look at the big picture. But for the details, commercial short-term rentals are hotels. They should be treated the same. They should comply to the same life safety and building standards. Not every building can be a hotel though, which is why we need a better definition of hotels. They're not double shotguns that are full of bunk beds. When short-term rental operators are looking to avoid density and capacity restrictions, they file for a hotel permit. The definition needs to look at a minimum number of rooms and square footage. This is also finally an opportunity to use short-term rentals to leverage some affordable housing. Add the mandatory inclusionary zoning requirements to all lodging accommodation types. Also, let's look at mixed-use districts again. As a commenter said earlier, if you choose to live in a commercial district, well, there are very few actual commercial districts. New Orleans is known for mixed-use districts, and mixed use means residents live there. So if you allow all visitor lodging without limitation, that's all you're going to get. You're not going to lose, you're going to lose the residents, but you're also going to lose the businesses that serve the residents. So your personal service establishments, your smaller, your vet clinics, you're going to lose all of these. You're just going to have places where tourists go. And lastly, I do want to note on the French Quarter, we appreciate that the motion does not specify that the French Quarter should be part of the study. The French Quarter is home to less than 3,000 residents, and it is home to over 7,000 hotel rooms. So there are 70 hotel rooms, hundreds of illegal short-term rentals. So we appreciate the fact that the motion did not outline that specifically. But now's the time we can really get it right. Thank you.
Thank you. We have no more cards, so the public comment section is closed. Are there any questions for us staff? Or any comments that folks want to leave before we move on? I just want to go on record to thank staff ahead of time. I know this has been a very gruesome experience trying to navigate both the questions about displacement, the questions about supporting our economy, and the work isn't over just yet. It's just beginning. So I just want to say thank you for taking on this task because it's not easy and there's no silver bullet solution. Okay, so we'll move on to the next docket item. Thank you, everyone. Subdivision ratification.
There is a list of subdivisions in your packet that the staff finds to be eligible for administrative approval. You as a commission are ratifying or not the decision to administratively approve them. So there does need a motion to be a motion to ratify them.
Thank you. Is there a motion or question?
I move adoption. Ratification.
Commissioner Steve makes the motion.
I'll second.
Commissioner Alexander seconds. If there are no further discussion, I'll call the vote. Commissioner Joshi Gupta. Commissioner Lund.
Yes.
Commissioner Alexander.
Yes.
Commissioner Jordan, yes. Commissioner Brown
Yes.
and Commissioner Steve.
Yes.
Thank you. Moves forward. Is there any further business or things we want to discuss? If not, I'll ask for a motion to adjourn.
I'll make the motion to adjourn.
Motion by Commissioner Alexander, seconded by Commissioner Joshi Gupta. All in favor? Aye, meeting adjourned. Thank you.